Welcome to my YouTube channel and blog. I'm Jenny Hall. I'm here today with another card making tutorial. Today is another easy card design. I'm using Sweet Seasons and Christmas Pines, both from the Stampin' Up! Holiday catalog. My card base is made from Whisper White cardstock, and once it's folded and scored, it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I have a tip-top taupe layer that is 1/8 smaller than the card base, and then another layer that is going to be the card front made of thick Whisper White that's 1/8 smaller than the tip-top taupe. So each layer comes down and cuts in by 1/8 of an inch. This stamp set that I'm working with is Christmas Pines, and there are two different, I guess you want to refer to them as pine branches. But the pine branches have two different sets that look a whole lot alike. And one of them is a thick pine needle and the other one is a thin pine needle. So the way I interpret this is that the designer is originally wanting us to do two-step stamping. So to get the initial stamp down, I used Sahara sand as an original generation. That means, it's going from the stamp pad straight to the paper. And I'm going to go over it with mint macaron. I want the colors to be very soft, and I don't want them to take over the design of the sentiment. I'm going to let the sentiment really be the focal point of the card. So I'm going to put a layer of vellum over this stamping panel that is going to have the sentiment stamped in copper embossing. Excuse me, this time of the year is hard on our allergies. So I'm trying really hard not to get too much color depth on these pine branches. And so to get more movement around the card, I'm stamping off once and then stamping onto the card, which is generational stamping. I want to give the idea of some of the pine branches being farther away than the ones that are really dark and closer to the eye. So I will use the combination of the two ink colors and kind of go over each other to give shadows. The little pine cone is used in the same Sahara sand ink as I used for the pine boughs, so it's going to bring that color together. Sahara sand is a lighter color of tip-top taupe, so the three elements together with the pine cones, the pine branch shadows, and then the layer of the panel layer of tip-top taupe are all going to work together to bring the design as a whole. And it also looks really nice with the copper embossing. I'm taking this piece of vellum and I used my embossing buddy first to make sure that none of the embossing powder is going to stick to the paper that I don't want it to be, that I'm not using the Versamark. And the Versamark ink pad is what allows the embossing powder to hold to where the stamp is going to the paper. So if you don't use the embossing buddy, then the static between all these pieces of plastic cardstock are going to just pull that embossing powder where I don't want it to go, and I won't be able to get it back off. So in order for me to have a clean image, then I always use some sort of an anti-static tool. The copper embossing is really nice, and it looks really nice for holiday cards as well. It's not as garish as gold is, and sometimes silver can be a little bit too subtle. So I chose the copper embossing just to kind of meet in the middle, and it looks nice with the subtle tones of the pine the back layer. So to put the card together, I'm going to use some snail adhesive with the layer of cardstock that is going to go onto the card base. And because I'm working with a lot of nice thick cardstock, I really don't feel concerned of using any dimensionals I feel using dimensionals are going to be more than enough. Sometimes I am cautious and I use some sort of different adhesive that's like a foam sticky adhesive to put my layers together. But dimensionals will work really great on this project. Once the piece of vellum is put on, then you will be able to see the design come through the front of the card, and it's going to tone it down to where the eye is going to go directly over to the sentiment and then kind of follow back over to where the soft tones are. These are mini glue dots that I'm using only in the corners of the card to adhere the vellum to the front of the card. I do know that when you use vellum, you're going to have any kind of adhesive show through. That's just the way vellum works. And for this card, I am perfectly okay with using 4 glue dots. And I tried it out in advance and I did not feel that the glue dots were going to take away from the design. For a bit of added texture and just a little bit of specialness to this card, I chose to make a bow out of some twine. I have the linen thread and the white baker's twine, and I've just kind of put them together and made a double strand and then made a small bow from that double strands together. I'm using a glue dot to hold the bow in place, and it's not anything fancy. It's just something to add just a little touch of hominess to the card. And I have a few sequins that are, I believe they're called emerald or maybe shamrock green, and they are from Pretty Pink Posh. I like to have some sort of sequin on a card, but sometimes I become a little bit concerned with them competing for the card design. I like to choose a neutral color that will allow the card itself to not be taken over by the sequins. So these colors here are a very bold green, but I feel that they kind of echo and bring the green that's behind the vellum up to the front of the card a bit. And it just gives a little touch of bling bling. Just a little. Thank you guys for joining me for another card tutorial. I invite you to come over to my blog at jennystampsop.com, and there I have a new card project every day. And if you would like, you can subscribe to my blog and you'll get an email every day in your email box, and it will have that card idea. Thank you for joining me again, and I'll see you in the next video.